Right before he's about to leave, he goes, "You know what? When they found that Dennings guy, I don't know if you know this, when they found him at the bottom of the stairs, his head was turned completely around."
And donuts. We sell donuts.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Blood and Donuts. I'm Tony.
And I'm Chris. Thanks, everybody, for joining. It's finally here. October.
Halloween.
We got through sequel September. That was a blast. YouTube's blowing up with that. It's been crazy. It's been fun.
Yeah.
And now here we are, finally spooky month.
This is what it's all about. What's crazy is people have been asking me so what do you watch at Halloween time? What horror movies you watch? And I'm like, and I was like, I watch horror movies year round. So what's funny is when it's Halloween, I'm watching family stuff. So I'm watching Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which is a Disney movie. I'm watching The Haunted Mass, which is a Goosebumps. I'm like, they're like, what horror movies? I'm like, actually, I kind of lighten it up a little bit during October because I'm watching fall friendly family stuff, which is hilarious. But this is not fall family friendly. This is The Exorcist from 1973. How cool and exciting. And this is a perfect movie to be doing during October and Halloween. The scariest movie ever made. So it's so cool to be reviewing this with you. Finally, here at the Blood and Donuts podcast, we start by sharing an overview, facts, and our first impressions. Then Chris and I give our donut rating. And then we do a discussion, scene by scene, full of spoilers. But don't worry, we'll let you know before we do that. Chris, how does our donut rating even work?
So we rate our movies on a 1 through 13 donut scale. A 1 through 4 is terrible. We're not going to recommend that to you. A 5 through 8 is kind of like a mid tier. It's worth it if you have time. It's not terrible, but it's not great. And 9 through 12 is great. You would definitely want to go check out a 9 through 12 film. And Tony at 13, that's our Baker's Dozens here. That's pretty rare. Considered a masterpiece of a horror film, and maybe even in the discussion of best of all time. I think we saw this, back 25 plus years ago together.
Yeah, so I purchased it. I purchased the version you have never seen. I purchased it on DVD, watched it a couple times, and then this is one of the few you would typically watch the movies before I would, but this is one of those few ones where I watched it, and I think my second or third time watching it, I got to watch it with you, and it was the version that you've never seen. Now I think you said on this rental you accidentally got the old one, correct?
Yeah. I got the Amazon Prime version, and when I got through with it, I was like, where did my spider walk go? And where was the 15 shots of Pazuzu, subliminal messages? What happened? I missed all that.
Well, the Exorcist purist would say that's the good version that you got to see. You got to see the theatrical version from 1973, and people like us, millennials, we would say no. Are we millennials, Chris? I'm sorry. Is that? Are we Z? Really I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, us born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s, whatever. So we would say that the version that.
In 1999, it was voted the scariest movie of all time.
The version that you've never seen is the best version because you got the spider walk, you got Pazuzu up on the little shots of Pazuzu throughout the thing. That's the one that you and I grew up on. So to us, that's the definitive version, and it is Blatty's favorite version as well. So that's cool.
Nice, and that's important.
The Exorcist is a 1973 American supernatural horror film directed by William Friedkin. From a screenplay by William Peter Blatty based on his 1971 novel. The film follows the demonic possession of a young girl and her mother's attempt to rescue her through an exorcism by 2 Catholic priests. The film stars Ellen Burstyn, Max von Sydow, and Jason Miller and Linda Blair.
Oh, good old Ellen Burstyn and Linda Blair. Our last seen on this channel on The Exorcist Believer.
I don't know if we should even. I don't even want to bring that movie up. That movie I feel like missed the mark. They didn't understand exactly what this movie's about. The Exorcist Believer. We did a review on that, and I think it did more to tarnish the legacy of this film than it did for good. So anyway, go back and go back and see our review on that. But they brought those back for that legacy sequel. That's what it was.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But yeah, this one, I mean, people were walking out of the theater in this one. I mean, back in the 70s, right? Like they were just terrified.
Horrible. I never seen anything gross like that in my life. I had my fingers up into my ear about that far, and I just couldn't take it. And it was just too sickening. It really was. It was bad.
You and I, now that we've seen Evil Dead, and now that we've seen Terrifier coming out, all this stuff, like this is a little tamer than those. But at the same time, I go, this came out 50 years ago. And when you see that cross and she's like stabbing it into her crotch, that little girl, you're like, you also go, they showed this in 1973, like, which is like, it just blows my mind. So on one hand, I'm like, this movie's kind of tame, and on the other hand, I'm like, this movie's nuts, you know, like, so I understand, like, I can understand why people were walking out of this. And a couple of the reviews said that the realistic medical
getting the needle in the neck and the spinal tap, stuff like that was driving people out there like, no, that's too much for me. Like, so realistic looking.
Those were the scenes where people walked out the most, is like the shots and the spinal tap. And it was eerie. Like there was no music during those things. It felt like in the doctor's office in the hospital, it felt like
you just hear the beeping and the nurses talking, and it's so realistic.
That is where this movie shines. And I feel like it kind of steps at like what Blatty wanted, and he brought it right to Friedkin when he wrote this novel. He said, I want a realistic horror film based on this novel, and you're the one to do it. And that's exactly what they accomplished. There's a very somber, realistic tone. This is not flashy. This is not going to get you there right off the get-go. And you have to be very patient. You have to sit on your hands for this one for a little bit and kind of enjoy it, take in the atmosphere, and then let this film come to you. Because you really have to take in The Exorcist. It's almost like you need to carve out enough time to sit there and enjoy it properly, in my opinion.
Right. And you don't want to get up and go like do something else or be messing around on your phone or anything. If you're our younger audience, pay attention to this film. If you're a horror fan, and you'll love it. It definitely takes you on a ride. It's very fun. And we were talking about the soundtrack. I mean, like, you know, a lot of those scenes are just, there's no music, but I felt like you could have had that Tubular Bells theme just kind of playing throughout the film. Just lower it down for some of the less, you know, more intense parts, and then raise it back up when they're doing montages. Such a great track.
I love that. And again, one of our favorite horror movies, Halloween, 1978. Like 5 years prior, you got Tubular Bells. You got to say that John Carpenter had to be, a little bit influenced by that awesome music from this movie.
Absolutely.
This is based on a novel. We just said that this is also inspired by a true story. Is loosely based on the 1949 exorcism of a young boy referred to as Roland Doe. Now, like horror films, I love a good horror film. I love a fake one. I love a good story. But the ones that are based in realism, like this, as we believe to be real, like the Amityville Horror, The Conjuring, which is coming up this month. You know, those movies, they're special, right? You're like, so
they make you feel involved. I mean, even Blair Witch did it well too, where you're so roped into, oh, this is like found footage. Like it was like the real first found footage film that really got popular, and that kind of marketing just ropes you in. And this one did a great job for its time. I mean, this is such a iconic kind of like landmark film that horror today even could look back on it, because some of these scenes hold up today, and you're like, oh my God, like you were mentioning, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they did that.
Yeah.
And it still holds up in like shock value today.
Linda Blair as Reagan McNeil. Blair, only 14 years at the time, played the possessed child Reagan, a role that made her an instant star. Her performance, can't say enough about that, right?
Yeah, really, really well done. And, it wasn't just her screaming and flaring. She had some of those sentimental, heartfelt moments with her mom, and some of those like scared little girl moments at the hospital, and then creepy moments at the house where she's like, you're going to die up there. And that's,
Yeah,
Gives you chills, man.
I was going to say that the relationship and the chemistry that her and Burstyn had is it's uncanny. It's not natural for most films. This one, like, I really felt like they were mother and daughter, and not to and Ellen Burstyn, who was a relatively unknown actress coming into this. Me on the outside looking in as a teenager, and she made me believe that she was a famous actress living in an affluent neighborhood in Germantown. Outside of DC, and they were having these issues. I was totally engulfed in whatever she was selling me.
And the way they showed it, I mean, everything looked like it was just filmed in like a documentary, like not documentary style, but
I know exactly what you're talking about.
It did not look like movie scene setup props or anything like that. It looked like a neighborhood. It looked like a real archaeological dig at a site. It looked like, these priests at a church and a college and stuff like that. I mean, it looked all so real.
People out there who hate this movie, Chris. They say it's boring. They say it's I don't know that I don't get that. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, Linda Blair got death threats for her role and all. I mean, you're gonna get those extremist kind of things happening with kind of controversial films like this for sure.
There's two camps. There's camps that say this is an incredible horror film that has influenced an entire genre of. I mean, every demon possession movie is going to be compared to this one. Always.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And so, like, and then there's the other camp who said, "Oh, you call this the scariest movie that's ever been made? It's not the scariest movie. It's boring. This thing sucks." And the problem was it was so popular. It was so big. I mean, a huge percentage of America. This is the first R movie that they have ever seen, and it was just so big. It has been parodied so many times. Like, you see it on SNL. You have seen it in Scary Movie. You have seen it you've seen just goofy renditions of this thing to the point where it's just like Beetlejuice said, it's getting kind of funny. It's kind of funny to even look at, it's just pea soup, it's just, and the power of Christ compels you. I think of Dr. Evil doing that to his chair, which is, it's not doing the correct thing.
I need an old priest and a young priest. The power of Christ compels you. The power of Christ compels.
Yeah. So that's the problem with a movie that is so freaking popular, is it gets parodied. Yeah. It's kind of, but you have to be huge to get
easy target.
It's an easy target, but you have to get all of that out of your mind. It's not just a great horror movie. It's a great movie, period.
I'm going to touch on that too. That's a good point. If you take away the horror element and you kept the same kind of cinematography and music and pacing, and if it wasn't just a flat out horror film, it's a good movie. Like, if you take away all the gore and all the extreme cursing and things like that, like if you muted all that, you still have like a crazy, story with like a good, a good build up and a good climax. So, all around, I think it's just a good, and like you said before, this is before all of those pillars of horror. I'll mention that in my rating, but this is before all those. And so at 1973, this might have been the scariest movie ever made at that time.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like,
what
else was there?
It still holds up. I've watched. It's 50 years old. I watched it. It's still held up for me.
And that's crazy to think it's 50 years old.
And when you see some of the behind the scenes of how they insulated the walls so many feet thick, so they could bring in chillers and cool the room down to achieve the breath. That is something that nowadays we take for granted. We would just CGI that in later. They actually had to chill the room down to do that. They had to build a Reagan that looked incredible, that would actually spin her head around. When you're seeing all the stuff like flying around the room, that is stuff that's actually being thrown and you know what I mean?
Yeah. I was gonna mention that. That's done better in this movie than the Poltergeist.
It was done much better
when stuff's flying around the room. And when they brought those chillers in and stuff, and they could only film like 3 minutes at a time or something because all the lights and stuff would warm it back up, and they would lose seeing the breath. So they had to like film a little bit and then wait for it to cool back down. It's crazy how they did it. Practical effects were fantastic.
Incredible. Mercedes McCambridge is the voice actress who ultimately did the voices of Reagan, the demon, Pazuzu, rather. Not
day for an exorcism. You'd like that? Intensely. But wouldn't that drive you out of Reagan?
It would bring us together.
Father Karras, Jason Miller, who played Father Karras, was not originally cast. He convinced Friedkin to give him the role after a deep conversation about faith. He was actually in a famous play at the time. Friedkin had went and saw him and said, "Oh my God, he would be perfect for this role."
Yeah.
And then Jason Miller said, "This is me. You got to put me in this film." They had somebody, a famous actor, already hired. They had to pay him, send him away, and they went with Jason Miller on this, which is crazy.
Wow.
And and we could talk for hours about the production of this film and how and the links that Friedkin went to get these performances out of these actors and some of the who was cast, who was not cast, and there's so many famous people who were considered for this. And we can also talk about the curse of The Exorcist and all the things that went wrong, just like we did with Poltergeist. The set caught fire. There was multiple deaths during production. Linda Blair got hurt. So did
Ellen Burstyn.
Ellen Burstyn got hurt as well. Many of the crew, just different things happened.
Did you see where Jason Miller got into a fight with William Friedkin about he shot a gun off by his ear because he wanted him to act shocked?
Oh no,
and, he's like, he told him not to. He's like, I'm an actor. You don't have to do that. Like, I can act scared.
Man.
Like, you don't have to shoot a gun in my ear.
Friedkin is like notorious for being like just one of the meanest, craziest directors ever, and it's kind of like his lying to the links that he would go to, that he would hurt actors and punish them to get huge reactions out of them, and kind of pompous and stuff. And anyway, I'm not gonna sit here and just trash him, but you could go and just research the Friedkin and some of his antics that he kind of went through to make this movie. But he did make one of the, in my opinion, probably one of the greatest horror movies of all time.
Yeah, it's up there.
A real life priest in the cast of Father William O'Malley. He plays the Father Dyer in the movie, and he's the one at the end, which Linda Blair comes up and kisses on the cheek.
Yeah, that's nice of her.
Yeah.
Honestly, they all look like real, whatever they were cast for.
Yes.
I bought it. Like they all did a great job, especially like you said, Jason Miller. Like I was looking after I finished watching the movie, I was like looking at him, like what else was he in? I was like, man, they still got like the black and white photo of him on like IMDb. It's like, man, he was in his 50s or something when this was made. Like it was, he was born in 1939.
That's crazy.
So
it's nuts.
Away, 2001.
He was just like a Broadway actor type of deal, you know what I mean? So
man, he nailed it.
Max von Sydow, he was 44 years old during this production, and
yeah, they used more makeup on him just about to make him look old.
You could not convince me that he was not 70 years old in this film. He is
a 70-year-old like rundown priest.
Yes, the way his hands were shaking when he was trying to get a pill and stuff, and the makeup was so freaking good for this. I was just like, he's 44 years old. You're lying to me. But seriously, you can go in the 2000s when he was actually like 70. He looks like he did in the movie in 1973. It's the craziest thing. It's nuts, man. Why don't you go ahead and get into your review, man? We can sit here and talk all day about The Exorcist.
Movie's insane first time. It still has some great moments that have that shock value today. The music is outstanding where it is. There's a lot of spaces where it's not needed, and it works just as well as a good soundtrack. Like you were talking about, the pacing works, and the acting is, like I said, phenomenal. Everyone in this film, I didn't see like one bad where I'm like, man, I wish they had cast him. Maybe like the overly drunk dude, the Burke character, maybe him when he's just really drunk.
Yeah.
Maybe him, but whatever. And this movie was before those pillars of horror that we talk about all the time: the Halloween, Friday the 13th, the Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Evil Dead, and it still holds up. I have no choice. You have to give The Exorcist a 13 out of 13, perfect score for a great horror film for its time, which still has that shock value today.
Dang, Chris. I know you're going to give it a perfect score. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, man.
Can you help an altar boy, Father? Sorry. I've been a fan of The Exorcist since my teens, and it remains one of the best films I have ever seen. The first time I watched this in the late 90s, I was blown away by how well it held up for a movie from 1973. And even today, it still has that same impact on me. The casting is exceptional. Linda Blair's performance as Reagan is haunting, believable. Max von Sydow as Father Merrin adds gravitas to the role of the experienced exorcist. The supporting cast, including Jason Miller, Father Karras, and Ellen Burstyn as Reagan's mother, are equally remarkable. The score, especially the now iconic Tubular Bells, is minimal but incredibly effective in setting the eerie tone of the movie. The atmosphere is unlike anything in modern horror, from the quiet moments in Georgetown to the horrifying scenes in Reagan's bedroom. The tension is so great. The slow build up to the scenes with the demon is one of the film's greatest strengths. It doesn't rely on cheap scares, but instead draws the audience into its story, making the horror that much more terrifying when it actually hits. The Exorcist is not just a great horror movie. Like I said, it's a great film in every sense. Its themes of faith, fear, and battle between good and evil are timeless, and it has influenced an entire genre of demon-possessing films. For me, it stands as one of the greatest movies of all time, and not just horror movies, and it's still as powerful today as it was decades ago. I'm going to also give it a 13 out of 13 donuts for The Exorcist, of course, Chris. And there's going to be so many haters out there. It's like, what? The Exorcist?
Oh, it'll be all right.
There's people.
It'll be all right.
Dead Meat said he didn't like this movie.
I did see that.
Wasn't
yeah,
a big fan.
Like, oh man,
kind of broke my heart.
But hey, yeah, I was a little upsetting. But I like how your review made mine look like this movie good, and then like I was done. And then
Chris,
you had like a great monologue there, man. Great job. That's great score.
No. Exorcist is again. It was one of those films that I owned. It was one of those pillars. You know, those pillars.
It's one of the first DVDs I had. I think.
Yeah,
I had like that and some other DVDs or something. But
it
was one of them.
Oh yeah, when they came out with the version you never seen, you had to own it. You know what I mean? Yeah. If you have not seen The Exorcist, where have you been? Go watch it. Yeah. Go watch the version that you've never seen. You want to.
If you're older teens or older,
you gotta see that spider walk down the stairs. Some people say it's goofy. It's not. It's amazing. Go watch it. Go watch that. I want to see Pazuzu. Turn the lights off. I want to see his face on the closet and on the cookware and all that stuff. I want to see that. So make that happen. Here it goes. Are you ready for the spoilers?
Let's spoil it, man.
Northern Iraq, Father Merrin takes part in an archaeological dig in the ancient ruins of Hatra or Hatra. This is a real archaeological dig, by the way, Chris. Did you know that?
It looked like it.
This predates Saddam Hussein. There was no American embassy over there. They were out there just freeballing, filming this thing, which is crazy to even think about.
It really is.
During the dig,
it got a little tense.
Yes. During the dig, he finds a stone talisman, a winged being that evokes a concerned look on his face. Then he has a vision in which a giant version of the same being appears nearby, silently confronting him.
Merrin.
I
like how when he gets to the house later, like the demon like wants Merrin. He's like, no, give me Merrin.
Oh man.
Or he's like, fear the priest, fear Merrin.
Yeah. When you're seeing the front of the DVD and you're seeing the light, that street light, and you're seeing the priest holding the suitcase, he's got the hat on and he's looking up. That's Merrin, right?
Yes. Okay. That is Merrin. Yeah. That is The Exorcist.
The Exorcist. But what's funny is you get more of Jason Miller's story, Father Karras.
Yeah, you do.
You know?
Yeah.
And dear me. And like just seeing Miller and seeing his just the relationship that he has with his mother. He obviously loves her, but she's living on the poor side of town. The priesthood is not paying too well. And he's fighting with his faith here. He's like, this kind of sucks, like this life that I have chosen for myself. He's like, I've been faithful. I feel like I'm being faithful. I'm helping the poor and stuff. My mom's over here suffering. This ain't working out too good, right?
Yeah. It's a really interesting, and it's kind of like a side plot there with him and his struggles with faith. And I mean, he's like at a bar I don't know what the priesthood thinks of being at bars and stuff, but he's at the bar with the other priest, and they're just grabbing a couple beers. And
I think you could do that when you're a Catholic. Yeah, that's no big deal. I think
okay.
Yeah, you can have some beers. You can drink as a Catholic. Yeah, you can drink. You can do some cool stuff. You just can't have sex, unfortunately.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. But he's struggling with his faith. His mom's suffering, and then you got Ellen Burstyn over here, who is just. I feel like they're doing well. They're a well-to-do family, living in Germany.
Butlers and stuff.
Yeah, they got a whole staff. What's crazy? Like I love maybe it's just coming from a middle class family. I'm still a middle class family, but like what is it with Home Alone, The Exorcist, like all these films? They always put these families.
Terrifier 2, where they had that monster outside of a house.
They had a monster house, but they were middle class inside for some reason. But yeah, what is it with the freaking mansions that these people are in? It always shows rich people. It's because that's what we want to see. We want to see a millionaire in the 1970s. Anyway, Reagan talks about riding horses and all this stuff.
Yes, I want a pony for Christmas or whatever. It's like,
yeah. And so in this, again, this just opens with you got Father Marin over there, and obviously he's seeing this. He picks up a little head of a demon. He sees Pazuzu, a big statue demon. He runs away, and like there's some dogs fighting. He almost gets run over by a horse and carriage and stuff like that. He ends up taking a pill. Looks like he's dying. Looks like he's a dying man.
Yeah, I think those were Altoids, but yeah, he's like you said earlier. He's just handshaking, grabbing the little pill, and it's just really well acted. There's not a lot of talking. There's just a little kid runs up to him. It's like, hey, we found something at the dig site. Says it in Iraqi speak.
Yeah.
And then I guess after that, he just hangs out there until he's called upon later.
But beautifully shot. You know what I mean? Like if you're looking at it, I mean, just the visuals are very
the
pretty.
Scenery, cinematography. This first part is really engrossing. I guess I can see how people might just say it's boring, but for me, I'm just like, okay, what's going on at the site? Like, this doesn't look like the preview, but let's go. Looks nice.
I really enjoy it. In Georgetown, Washington, D.C., actress Chris McNeil is starring in a film directed by her friend Burt Dennings. McNeil, along with her 12-year-old daughter Reagan, rents a luxurious home with hired help. Meanwhile, Father Damien Karras, a psychiatrist who counsels Georgetown University priest, visits his ailing mother in New York. He later confides to a colleague that he's having a crisis of faith.
Oh, Demi. The mother, I mean, she plays a little scary role later for me. Her sitting up in the freaking bed is still one of the creepier shots in the horror for me.
It's just, was that in the original, the one that you watched?
That is the one that I watched.
Okay,
yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know if
I would have stopped and watched a different one if I didn't see that. Because I know that was happening.
You'd let your mother die. You abandoned your mother. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I love how the demon like brings that up later. Like, hey, you're left her to die.
Yeah, and that's such a trope that demons use in horror movies going forward. Is they use your doubts, your fears, your worries. They know that about you, and they use it against you. And this kind of like put that in forefront. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he obviously he was heartbroken, loved his mother, and the fact that the demon knew that and like knew how to really tear at his heartstrings, and as much as the older priest tried to warn him of that, he still fell prey to it, didn't he?
Yeah, he still fell for it.
And I would too.
Yeah.
So this is where you meet Chris McNeil. You get Burstyn's character, and then it kind of shows Reagan and her relationship, and again, like when she's like singing her to sleep or putting her to sleep rather, they have a really good conversation, which is very, very real, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really heartfelt, and that's why like her acting is so great. I mean, you feel like Linda Blair's acting is just on point. Her child actor, and it's really well done. You can't really say enough about it.
Yeah, you know the little girl from Willy Wonka the one who chewed the gum, Violet, and she like I don't have her name right in front of me, but she was the first one who was considered for that role, and
Really?
her parents read that and was like, absolutely not. Linda Blair's parents read it and said, please, she would be perfect.
Wow.
Which makes me want to question Linda Blair's parents, because like would you let your kid act in this? You know what I mean? Like
that's a good question.
Ooh, that's tough.
How much is it for?
Chris hosts a party with Karis' friend, Father Dyer, who explains that Karis' role as counselor and notes his mother's recent death. Reagan, seemingly unwell, appears, and she urinates before Chris comforts her. Reagan's bed shakes violently after Chris returns to her. Later, Dyer consoles Karis, guilty at not having been with his mother when she died.
Yeah, because she was like in a home there. They moved her to a home,
hospital.
And his uncle came and was like, oh, why can't you move her here? And he's like, you got the money for her, dude?
Right.
Like, we ain't got that kind of money around here. And this is where the movie starts to pick up. You see Reagan starting to act a little bit stranger. She's maybe just walking up to the person and she's like, you're going to die up there.
Man.
He's on the floor, leaves. And then she does, her bed shakes and stuff like that. And all the while, like, I don't know if it's going to talk about it in this next part, but these doctors are trying to figure out what's wrong with her. And they're like, oh, it's just a something. And it's like, nope, everything looks good on the scans.
It's so frustrating, but there's something so wrong. And they find a Ouija board, and this is kind of side plot. And I
want me to play, huh?
No, I do. Captain Howdy said no.
Captain who?
Captain Howdy.
Who's Captain Howdy?
I make the questions and he does the answers.
Love it. And I love this about this movie. They find a Ouija board, and she goes, where did you find this? And she goes, I found it amongst some things or whatever. And she goes, do you want to play with it? And her mom's just like, yeah. She doesn't think anything of it. She goes, I've been talking to Captain Howdy. And she goes, let me ask it a question. Do you think my mom is pretty? And she goes, Captain Howdy, that's not very nice, on the Ouija board. It's like I don't know. It's like low key, like so disturbing and crazy.
Yeah,
and
it's creepy.
And when she comes down like that, they're throwing this party, but the father is like any playing piano and stuff, and then Reagan.
I thought her father was out somewhere.
I'm sorry, I was
her father.
I'm sorry, I was saying father as in a priest.
Oh yeah. It's that
Father Dyer
priest.
Father Dyer was playing the piano. They're having this party, and then all of a sudden it stops because they're like, "Oh, the kid's awake," and they all go, "Oh, what?" They look to her and they go, "What's wrong, honey?" And then she just pees right there on the rug, and she's at an age,
it's like green looking.
Yeah, it's like at an age where you should not be peeing. And like I have talked to friends and lots of a couple different ones who talk about little girls and young girls especially sleepwalking and the things that they do, and it creeps me out so much, and it just makes me thankful that I have boys and I don't have girls, because there's something about girls and like walking around and sleepwalking and doing things and saying things in their sleep, which really creeps me out, which is probably an attest to this movie.
Yeah. Hey, I'm not gonna lie. My son has had some sleepwalking incidents too.
It's creepy, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Reagan's personality becomes violent. Medical tests, they find no physical cause. During a house call, Reagan exhibits abnormal strength. One night, Chris finds the house empty except for a sleeping Reagan. Dennings is found dead at the bottom of the set of public stairs that begin beneath Reagan's window. Detective William Kinderman questions Karis. How about his character?
I liked him. I thought he was a good addition to the film. He's kind of like ribbing Karis. It's a little creepy at the beginning. Like, why is this guy watching this priest run around this track, a few times, and then they finally meet up and start talking, and they're really cordial and friendly. But then the detective's really like prying at him, like, hey, what do you think? What would happen? And but I like the addition of his character. I think he's fine.
And I love him. I think he's great. And if you think about all the they're all horror movies that we watch that are just like, okay. What they would do here is they would just dump a bunch of an exposition dump of information.
Yeah.
But this is such a clever way. This detective shows up. He has this conversation, this very clever conversation, all this stuff. And right before he's about to leave, he goes, you know what? When they found that Dennings guy, I don't know if you know this, when they found him at the bottom of the stairs, his head was turned completely around. I just wanted to say that. You know what I mean? He just kind of said, it was just such a clever way of saying, instead of just like dumping that information in like a report or something like that, it was just
newspaper finding articles.
Yeah.
Looking in the library.
Oh yeah. That's what a modern horror film would do. But it was just such a great way of doing that.
And it was a slow way to do it. You're right. Yeah. And I had kind of forgotten about that side plot. For me, it's like exorcism, priest, they're getting the devil out. But then you have this kind of detective who's doing this side work. He's like, hey, this person died outside your window. That's pretty suspicious. Let's, and then you have this kind of like, oh shit, is the little girl, a killer? Did she kill Burke?
You have these it's a very unfaithful family. And, and so they don't, they're like the last thing they're ever going to do is go to a Catholic priest. But you have this detective who goes to this priest, trying to bring him in. The doctors actually say, have you ever looked at like calling a priest? Because we don't have any answers for you either. And she's just like, Ellen Burstyn's character is great at just like freaking out, just like, what are you talking about? Like no, I'm not. I don't know. It's hilarious. But confiding that Dennings' head was turned completely backwards, Reagan's body becomes covered with sores. Kinderman, that detective, tells Chris that the only plausible explanation for Dennings' death is that he was pushed from Reagan's window. And I love that, he's talking to the priest because he's like, this little girl would never do this. She's acting out of her mind. You know what I mean? He could have just went in there, arrested her, right? It's just it's just a cool character, I think, and I like he's a cool addition to that.
Yeah, he kind of falls off later in the film. They don't use him as much. They just kind of use him for this part here, and then like he kind of doesn't really conclude anything or finalize anything. But he's a pretty good little insertion here where he's just kind of keeping the plot moving along and also getting this little side plot going
and getting the priest involved with this family, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and you see him at the very end is like like he kind of like started it, saw it through, and like a kind of a conduit to this priest coming to this family. As Kinderman leaves, Reagan has another violent fit. This is when he comes to the house, talks to her. It's great. He's a big fan. He actually gets her autograph and stuff, which is awesome. But when he leaves, it like the crap just really amps up here. It's nuts. Detective Kinderman leaves. Reagan has another violent fit. She starts stabbing her crotch with a crucifix and turning her head backwards. She's confined to her bedroom. Now convinced that her daughter is possessed, Chris seeks out Karis, who visits Reagan. The possessed Reagan claims to be the devil and vomits into Karis's face while speaking in tongues. The demon says it will remain in Reagan until she is dead. At night, Chris's assistant calls Karis to the house. He concludes that an exorcism is warranted. His superior grants permission on the condition that an experienced priest leads that ritual. Marin, having performed an exorcism before, he is summoned.
Like how they just like run up to him in the woods, and then he like turns around like time to go back. But there's a lot to unpack there too. And it's crazy. We were talking about a little bit before we came on air here. It's like, he has to have like proof that these things are happening so that the priesthood will grant him the exorcism. And it's like, well, speaking in tongues is one of them. Doing supernatural things is one of them. And like, I would have been convinced, like at the drawer opening, I'd have been like, "Hey, look, the drawer opened. I was sitting right there,
That's
and the
enough.
Drawer opened. That's enough for me, right?" But then they're like, "Oh, dang, she's not speaking in tongues. It's English backwards," and it's like that's just as creepy. Like nobody can do that. Like, why would you? Why would that be? I was like, oh, nope, can't sign off.
Technically, a demon doesn't. They speak in like a different language, but that's just English backwards. And he was also like, and she claims to be the devil himself. You know what I mean? She's got like she's so messing with him. She's like, I'm the devil, you know? And he's like, if you're
their dialogue is really good.
So
it's
good.
like a fine day for an exorcism. And he's like, oh, would you like that? And she's like, I would love one or whatever. Yeah. It's so good. It's really good dialogue.
In time. He goes, if you're the devil, why don't you loosen those straps? And she's like, that's such a vulgar display of power, Karis. Oh, it's so freaking good. And like, I mean, it just like, I can't say enough. I could watch those scenes over and over. It's just so good. But anyway, it's exorcism time. It's about to go down. This is the meat and taters. This is what you came for.
Yeah.
Marin arrives at the house. As the two priests read from the Roman ritual, the demon curses them. The priests rest, and Marin, shaking, takes nitroglycerin. Karis enters the bedroom where the demon appears as his mother, perturbing Karis. Damn, why'd you leave me, damn? Perturbing Karis, despite his denials, Marin excuses Karis and continues the exorcism by himself. Karis assures Chris that Reagan will not die, and he re-enters the room, finding Marin dead from a heart attack, while Reagan watches by and laughs. What's so funny, Reagan?
All right. That's not funny, man. And this was, like I said, I mentioned it earlier, but the scene where his mother is sitting up in the bed still haunts me to this day. And just the fact that Marin is dead now, it's like, it's kind of like really tense. Now you're like thinking, oh, like Karis is not going to do it. Like he can't even handle imitating his mother. Like, you know, what's he gonna do? And so you really kind of have this. Anyway.
You just said Karis literally left his mother to die. What is he gonna do?
Yeah, what's he gonna do?
He didn't even take care of his mother. What is he gonna do?
Yeah,
Chris.
No, he could. He couldn't handle the devil imitating his mother. How about that?
Yeah, that's true.
So he couldn't handle that. And so what's he going to do? But then, you see Marin's dead. I kind of had that hopelessness of like, holy crap.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
you do
what's
feel
going to happen now?
You do feel hopeless. And he promised Reagan's mom out there. He's like, yeah, don't worry, she's not going to die. And like you said, Marin is going through the ritual. He's like saying the words. And at one point, Karis is just sitting there shocked at what he's seeing. And he's like, Father Karis. He's like trying to get his, it like says his name like
Say
3 times.
Line,
yeah. He wouldn't even say the next line. Like you're just like, this dude's not going to be like this dude. He came as, like you said,
Karis.
Yeah. Like he's struggling with the mom thing. He can't say the words, all that good stuff. What is he going to do?
Yeah.
So this is crazy. He comes in, the father's dead, and this is where Reagan's just like, yeah, you left your mother to die and all this stuff, and he starts just wailing on her like, like, you know what I mean? Like, whereas like I feel like
really reaching.
Yeah, I feel like if Marin was still alive, he'd be like, "What are you doing, dude?"
Karis, I was just laying down for a minute.
I was just taking a breather. What are you doing? Karis starts beating the possessed Reagan in a fit of rage, demands that the demon take him instead. The demon rips the medallion of St. Joseph from Karis's neck and possesses him, freeing Reagan in the process. Karis jumps out of the window, tumbling down the stone stairs outside. Chris and Kinderman enter the room. Chris embraces the healed Reagan, and Kinderman surveys the scene. Outside, Dyer administers the dying Karis's last rites.
Ooh. All right. You got to help me here. Doesn't he come back in like Exorcist 3 or something?
Can we just like not
really
like what if like you know how Halloween has like 17 different timelines?
Okay. All right.
You know what I mean? Like that, like the new Halloween ends and all that stuff. Like they don't even bring Halloween 2 into play. There's like so many like different timelines and stuff.
So we'll just leave this part out.
Yeah, I want him to die right here because that's what has to happen. Out of all the franchises, Evil Dead, I have not seen a bad Evil Dead yet. You know what I mean? There's not a bad one. You know, Freddy Krueger. You know, I watched them when I was a kid. We're slowly working through them. There's some bad ones. Halloween obviously.
We just watched 2.
Halloween has some bad ones. Friday the 13th obviously has some bad ones. But
obviously,
The Exorcist is notorious for being the worst. There's like not even like there's no. I've heard that, and I haven't seen it, so I need to go back. You and I need to review it. I heard Exorcist 3 is good, but for the most part, everything I've seen Exorcist sequel is terrible. Chris, it's like an awful franchise.
Exorcist 2 is one of the worst horror films of all time, I believe is what I've read, and 3 is supposed to be decent, but it also has a returning Father Karras,
which it should have never happened. And again, this is
I agree with you.
When you say Exorcist franchise, that's where you go wrong. This is a movie that should have never been. It's like again, it's like you don't want Forrest Gump 2. You don't want Armageddon 2. You don't want a franchise of. There's certain movies that should never be franchised. And I know horror is. Do you really want The Shining 2? You know, come on. Just you got to pump the brakes. You know,
The Thing 2.
I do want that, Chris. Even though
remake.
they remade it, man. It's awful.
I want another one.
They CGI'd the crap out of it. The demon rips them
really?
down. Yeah, they CGI'd the crap out of it.
Oh, come on.
The McNeils prepare to leave. Father Dyer says goodbye. Despite having no memory of her ordeal, Reagan, moved by the sight of Dyer's clerical collar, kisses him on the cheek. As the McNeils leave, Chris offers Dyer the medallion found in Reagan's room. He refuses, telling her to keep it. Dyer briefly examines the steps where Karras died before walking away.
And then you leave this movie alone. I actually typed that in my notes.
Yes.
I did type that.
Yeah. Why? This is a movie that does not need a sequel at all. But it was such a behemoth. It made so much freaking money.
Yeah. Yeah. You knew it was going to have to try to cash in some more.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, I mean, and that ends one of the better horror films of all time, I think.
It is. And when you do a scene by scene of this one, it doesn't do it justice. You have to go watch it for yourself. This is something. It's Halloween time. Turn the lights off. Light a couple pumpkins. Light some candles and stuff, and just enjoy this horror film. It's a slow burn, and just watch it under the guise of this being a 1973 movie, which is crazy to me. I can't believe this came out 50 something years ago.
And isn't this still one of like the highest grossing movies of all time if you count for inflation and stuff like that?
Oh, it has to be. I think so.
I think it is. I think it's like top 10, and then maybe even like for Warner Brothers, it's still number 1 or something.
It was
like
a phenomenon. It was a phenomenon, and it wasn't just because of shock. It was because it was a great movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can say, people were puking and all this stuff. Go like Terrifier, yes. When you go watch the Terrifier 2, Terrifier 3, yes, that's what they're going for. We watch these movies. We like them. We laugh. We think it's literally for shock value. This movie is not that. This movie is so much more than that. And it's special and it holds up. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like I said, you can take away all of the shock factor of what there was in this movie, and you still have those kind of elements there. You still have a fantastic overall movie. So hey, kicking off October, thanks for we finally did The Exorcist, one of those in the books. Now we got a few other good ones coming up. We got
Conjuring.
Halloween H2O is next.
H2O, and then we also have The Conjuring. John's gonna.
Good. I was asking about John. John's coming back for The Conjuring.
Yeah,
nice.
Y'all know John. He was on When Evil Lurks. He joined us for The Poltergeist, and he's coming back. Hopefully, he says he is. He's coming for The Conjuring, so we're looking forward to that. And just looking forward to spooky season and enjoying these horror films, these iconic horror films like The Exorcist. Man, happy Halloween, dude.